Welcome. Today we're talking to Joyce Perrone, Orthotics and Prosthetics business operations and billing guru. She was formerly the director of a Pittsburgh-based practice for nearly 3 decades, and now she serves as an advisor/consultant to several exciting companies, including Humotech. Tune in to learn more about her humanistic, data-driven approach to patient care and value creation. Now, without further ado, Joyce Perrone. Hi, Joyce. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Hi, Josh. Good to see you.
Yeah, I feel like it's been a while. Thanks for coming on the podcast. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me on. It's quite an honor.
So, you and I met, some moons ago, because of your role at a local O&P practice. But I've also come to learn you're an invaluable consultant to many others around the country. I was hoping we could start with you sort of setting the stage for our listeners, with respect to your career over the decades.
Well, it's been an interesting journey. And I think for most people, I'm sure there's some people out there where their journey is a straight line. And for most of us, it's a little bit of a serpentine. So I originally went through college in biology and a lot of field biology, field statistics, things like that. I loved. My goal was to be like Jane Goodall. She was my hero at the time, having a female model, a strong female model in the world of biology and field biology was awesome. And to this day, I follow her. She's still a hero. I ended up working in hepatitis research for a bit in a lab, got bored, went into private business for a little bit, and then went back to the hospital systems and got into the business end. Went back to school then for business because I had zero and kind of landed there. Went through a couple different hospital systems, and then what you do when you do a whole bunch of different stuff is you become a consultant then. So I was in straight medical consulting, consulting to physician practices. And I was with an accounting company actually that had carved off consulting operationally for physicians practices. So that's what I was involved with. And Torre Orthotics and Prosthetics was one of the accounting company's clients, and I got pulled into this industry, kind of stuck the landing for the next. I was going to be involved for like maybe 3 years, maybe 5.
Small project.
I didn't realize it was going to be like decades. But it's all been good. It's all been a good journey. And recently, the past crazy 3 years, went through the sell of that company, helping to sell it, helping the new owners to transition it, which was an amazing learning for me. I mean, you could read tons of books and watch a million videos, but it's nothing like going through it. It's crazy. So went through that and then said, that's enough. That's enough. And thought I'm just going to retire. But then I went down to a conference, talked to a few people, and decided, I still got a little bit of juice left in the engine here. I'll keep consulting a little bit. So I've picked up a few clients here and there, and so it's been fun. It's been wonderful, actually. It's been great to not feel like that pressure day to day, and I could kind of pick and choose, and so it's been a good time.
I imagine it's been really helpful to cross-pollinate insights across different businesses. And I've experienced this myself. It's also challenging being pulled in a lot of different directions as a consultant. How do you keep your hat on?
I think I'm pulled less as a consultant than I was as, an operations person in a company. Working for, especially a small business, you have a billion hats. As you know, any day you're wearing a billion different hats. You are the safety person. You do some HR stuff. You get involved financially. You get involved when the exit light isn't working, and it could be, and then you got all those problems that show up with hair on them called human beings. So those the tech problems, I'll take an IT problem any day. You get the right people on board, right? You're going to get that solved. But the people issues, it's like, oh my gosh, you never know what's going to walk through the door there on any day. But from the just doing straight consulting, which I loved originally, and I love it now. You could be a little more laser beam and really focus on, okay, here's what they need. I don't have to get involved in all the day-to-day stuff now. I could deal with, a little bit more under the microscope and just, dealing with certain things to get people to really get on track to make things robust in their company. Yeah.
That makes sense. Given that O&P is such a challenging industry, I mean, anyone who knows anything about the industry knows that it's billing and reimbursement is like a battle. I encounter a lot of different consultants who, help with this process because there's just there's sort of a dearth of expertise. Not every O&P business has a Joyce Perrone in-house, on the staff full time. But I'm curious, kind of how do you differentiate yourself in the field? Like, what do you think is uniquely Joyce about your approach?
Oh, I don't know, Josh. I I think that I've just been involved long enough and had enough exposure to a lot of different companies. And unfortunately, so many people, they're at one company and that's it. Or they do one thing and that's it. And while that could work, they're not as global. So, and they don't really get involved with, you have the day-to-day stuff. And sometimes if you're involved with, coding or compliance, you're very, very focused, and it's great. You have your high detail-oriented individuals focusing on that. But if you're at managerial or directorship levels, or VP levels, whatever those levels happen to be, and if you have not been out and about, I think that you become a little myopic, and it's like you live in this little personal village, and you're not out there. So I think that's one of the things that was different about what I did, because I was out there a lot and got to be involved in different aspects. Now, people could do that without consulting by getting involved with the national organizations. But geez, really doing some and having, people in leadership to help people stretch. And that was, I had a coworker who always said one of my superpowers was I could figure out what the best job is for a person. Just because not everybody's in the right seat on the bus, as Jim Collins, his icon is you want to have the right people in the right seat on the bus. And sometimes you have people not even on the right bus. But really being able to identify a person's skills and talents and abilities and get them into the right position so that you're going to have them hitting capacity, as opposed to having people in positions where they just don't have the capacity and they're going to get burned out and crispy. So I think that of the things that, everybody brings something different to the table, but if you could identify a human being where they are best put and then get them in that seat and then work on developing them to be really powerful, man, that's the key, is to really have good solid teams. I think the other thing that I've done that not many people do is really get involved in process work and get involved with Six Sigma or Toyota Production System or lean manufacturing, any of those. It is rare that in my travels across the country with different companies, I've run into maybe one, possibly two, where they really had their act together regarding identifying processes, mapping them out, having the correct people involved in those processes at the correct points in time along the process line to assure quality outcomes at the end. So that was another one of those moments in my career where I was like, oh yeah, this is the jazz, this is the stuff, is that it's not always a people problem. A lot of times it's a process problem.
I hear all that. Makes sense. And I feel like part of your special sauce too seems to be, well, and this is related to both people and process, but it's something about data. Those of us that are very analytical love data, want data on everything, want to be constantly measuring and learning and driving, performance indicators up and up. But it's also, you're faced daily with a deluge of data. And I think this is absolutely true in O&P and just about any line of work. But I think, we're kind of as a field looking at data as the potential solution to a lot of our problems. But you have to be very intentional about what data you collect and sort of how you leverage it. Curious for your thoughts there, kind of historically how you've leveraged data and maybe moving forward for the industry, what might be possible. And this is coming... This is coming fresh off the heels of AOPA. The National Assembly just happened and I was in attendance there and was really excited to learn of the recent progress with the Limb Loss and Preservation Registry.
Yeah, I think that one of the mistakes people make with data is going into it with a preconceived notion as to what you want to pull out of it. Instead of letting the data dance with you, and seeing what happens with it. I think that if you have the right people who can capture the raw data and then put it into very usable ways where you could kind of flip through it, look at it clearly, regarding, Power BI or pivots, whatever you're using, to really start seeing it and seeing what picture starts to evolve. And then you have your team of people work on it. I don't think it's one person looking at data because that could get screwball fast, right? Because it's going to be what fulfills me. What's going to make me look good or what's going to make my team look good. As opposed to, again, pulling the data, getting that big data together, and then being able to drill it out. I've been working with this wonderful, wonderful client who I love, who I worked with when he first opened his company. And when he heard that I was back in the game, he contacted me. So I've been doing some work with him. But that was one of I did a couple of things with them, but one of the early on things was yank a ton of data out of their system, raw data, and start just jumping and jiving with it. Again, not making any recommendations or anything like that, as opposed to, okay, let's you and I now sit down and look at this data. Because if I start making assumptions, I could be way off base. I could look at something and be way off base. Some things might jump out at me just experientially, but for the individual owner to start looking at it, and now you start looking at it and you think, okay, for example, is foot orthotics really what I want to do? And what kind of impact is it having on each office location? And what kind of return on that investment am I getting? And is it really worth it? And how much am I going to lose if I cut it? And where am I successful? Where am I losing? Where do I want to build it up? Which doctors are good? Which doctors are, all these kinds of questions. And then what's incredibly fun is as you start digging and poking at it, you start asking more questions. I don't know that data always gives you answers as much as it gives you more questions, and it really helps you to set your strategy for your company, and then you could constantly start looking at it, coming up with KPIs. And that's the other thing that is so absent in the majority of companies is good KPIs, for every different aspect and for individuals as well. So you end up just giving people raises, because I like this person or whatever. They've been here forever, they should get a raise, as opposed to, we're tested all through school, any kind of sports, everything you do, you're always tested, you're always evaluated. But then you get to the workplace and it's just like, blah, I sit here, I do stuff, and maybe I get a cookie, maybe I don't. As opposed to saying, okay, here's my KPI, here's my key performance indicator. I know what it is. I know what I should be targeting. And man, I'm going to blow it out of the water, right? And then if I do blow it out of the water, what does that look like in return, as an employee, and or KPIs for teams of people to strive and hit. So that's a whole lot of information, but I get a little passionate about it.
Yeah. This is where the people in the process kind of are inextricably linked. And you have to be strong in both. So moving on a little bit, you and I, you've been a great advisor to me over the years because of sort of how we've been able to level with each other about the industry. I've always appreciated your sense of optimism about what might be possible, while at the same time you're very realistic about the reality. I'm at the beginning of, or the relative beginning of my career, thinking, man, how could I survive in this industry for 30 years? And you're sort of on the other end of that. I'm curious if you have lessons learned, advice on staying enthusiastic and kind of walking that line between optimism and becoming jaded too early.
You always want to be sure that you surround yourself with both types of people. You want the Tiggers and the Eeyores in your life, right? So maybe just one Eeyore to every 4 Tiggers, but because you don't want too many Eeyores around. But I think that it's especially people coming into the field now, students that are coming in, graduating. There's always going to be people who get into a routine, who are not in a positive environment and are going to get dragged down. They're going to come out of it feeling it's hard to be hopeful and upbeat if you're surrounded by negativity. It really is. So you have to keep being around those individuals that are going to hold you up. And I think it was, I forget what book or whatever, but they said to have your own personal board of directors, right? And write down who those people are in the board of directors. These are not paid individuals or whatever. And mine has changed. I update mine, right? Because some of those people come and go out of your lives. But who are those 4 or 5 people that you should have on your board of directors who you could go to, you could be candid with, you could be open and honest, it's not leaving the room or whatever. They're going to be open and honest with you. It's a cup of coffee or whatever. And have that listed out. Who is on that personal board of directors for you? I've done that for years. And I have people from all walks of life on my board of directors. So, and they're the ones that I always went to whenever especially when I needed to make a big decision, I'd ask them. And, if I'd see consensus, if I get 3 out of 5, I'd be like, okay, maybe I should consider this and think about it. And I've gotten some exceptionally good advice as a result. And they've helped me because there's been times, where I bottom out and I'm just like, no, this is nuts. I'm just going to go back to a lab and do blood cell counts or whatever, and just like shut all the rest of this noise out. But if you're around and doing things that are exciting, you've got to get those feeds. And even just doing some consulting work, going to other places, meeting other people, getting involved with the national organizations all really help to be uplifting. I feel that people coming into this now, have you ever heard the term CAVU, C-A-V-U?
No.
It's used by pilots, and it means ceiling and visibility unlimited. So it's, I think that there is no ceiling. There is, the visibility is unlimited. It's whatever's in our imagination, getting the right tools to create. So it's some cool stuff that's just, it's come light years, from even whenever I first started in this. Torre did the first sea leg. We put the first sea leg on a patient. Didn't exist before then. And I remember hearing from patients, we did the first sea leg, in the tri-state area, not period, but the first sea leg in the tri-state area. Pennsylvania, Ohio, New York, I think was the area. We were the first ones. But what was incredible about all that was hearing these patients who, for the first time, were able to take a walk and not have to look at the ground constantly. That was just hearing those stories. You're like, okay, you're not getting that every single day, right? But hey, if you get that once every so many years or once a year or whatever, those are the moments, that we live and breathe. And the next thing you start hearing about is, you talk, and you're only going to get that by getting out there and talking to some people who are having like crazy successes. And it doesn't come down to just, bottom line money, and working with teams of people and just keeping people engaged and excited. And again, and I've said this, it might be a bit of a make me an outcast kind of thing, but I think that if anybody's if you're at a company, you're smart, you're hardworking, good work ethic, good ideas, you're getting shot down, you're getting tramped on, you pick up your, clean out your desk and leave. Be bold. Be bold. Don't waste your, what you're bringing. Don't waste it there. Let them die. Go someplace where you're going to be really valued and appreciated.
This is great advice. I wish I had heard earlier in my career, particularly the bit about seeking a sort of multiplicity of perspectives. I feel like for me, and maybe other young entrepreneurs have kind of experienced the same thing. You come out of college or grad school or whatever with all these big, bright ideas about how, you're going to change the world. And that optimism is, I think, essential for the world to become a better place. But it's also partly naivete. So, you enter the market and you're surrounded by, naysayers, and there are also cheerleaders, but it's kind of a chorus of voices that you have to figure out a process for yourself. And I think the hardest voice for me to deal with when I was first starting Humotech, sort of the voice of the financial investor type, who, to me, if I grossly oversimplify this complex industry, was basically saying, don't bother. O&P, it's too small. The market's too complex. It's just go invest your time and your energy and your money somewhere else where you can more easily make a buck. Yeah. So dealing with that kind of voice was hard because I had developed a real passion for trying to do good in this field, and genuinely believed I was onto something with some of the technology that we developed. Your perspective is interesting, for a lot of reasons, but especially because I think you have kind of witnessed the battles over and over and over again where patients and clinicians and insurance companies health system in general is sort of arguing about what to do with a novel technology. It's kind of experimental. we're not sure who it's going to be most beneficial to, and do the costs justify the outcomes? Well, we don't know yet because it's new. Okay, so distilling this into a question for you, I'm thinking about what sort of mental model have you developed when you walk across the exhibit hall at a conference, for example? How do you start to think about, is this a technology that's worth taking risks on? It's a big question.
Well, and I think that it's a multi-level question. And you gave a whole lot there, just to kind of unpackage a little bit about it. First, when you talk about the financial end of, the naysayer types, etc., the one thing to keep in mind is I'd have to work real hard or do a lot of research to figure out any great life-altering invention came out of the financial institution, right? Zero, I'm pretty sure. And if anything, or art or music, it's never been what's going to make money or what's going to be financially savvy. So part and parcel, I think, for inventors and for entrepreneurs is, you don't want to end up, you want to be able to grease the wheels and figure out how to do that. And I think that it becomes kind of bifurcated. So we have to we have to get up and we have to make the bread to sell to the common man, basically, is what we have to do as an O&P shop. We have to do that because that's going to get the cash flow to keep the thing rolling. And then we set up our model and we say, okay, we're going to take a certain percentage of that and we're reinvesting that then into R&D, into trying out these new things. And this year, we set aside X number of dollars and we're going to try this new thing out. And maybe you do it for certain patients, figure out how you could do it at least at cost, or, there's different ways to do things. And I think that anytime we slam the door with a hard no, because the bottom line, blah, 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 we miss amazing opportunities. And you have to be willing to take risk. I think that within any company, you want to have the person who's, you want your financial people, to have their feet on the ground, to, sometimes hold you a little bit by the back of the collar, hold you back a little bit so you don't, end up, on the sale block or anything. But you also want to have those who are willing to take a risk and give things a hard try. And I can't tell you, there's been more than one occasion where I, with Della Torre, and I walked out of a meeting, and I turned to my partner in crime, my marketing person, Libby, who you know well, and I'd say, "Are we going to make any money on this?" And she'd be like, "I don't know." And that was kind of the way we went about it. And then we evaluated it somewhere down the line. Is it doing well? Is it not doing well? Do we have to adjust it? Do we have to make some changes? So I think that it's, you could take the safe route all your life. And, I've seen places that just lead with no. Why not lead with what if? And why not lead with let's try? And again, I'm not talking, having to go out and raise, millions of dollars from venture capitalists to try something that might be not vetted well. But if you do your homework and everything else, maybe your bottom line this year isn't, maybe you're not bringing in, you're not clearing, $5 million. Maybe this year you're going to clear $4 million because you took $1 million and you invested it in something interesting. So you need to have, that kind of strategic plan with your finances. Your finances, your profit or loss, your balance sheets, they all need to be reflective of a different vibration, not just profit loss. I think profit loss is oversimplification and shallow for a company. Just to say, this is how much I brought in, this is how much I made, cut costs, take waste out of the system. Yeah, you should be taking waste out of the system, right? But I need to take a certain amount of money and say, I'm investing in R&D, I'm investing in my people so they could be better educated, so they could do better things, and really being strategic about what you're going to do with the money you do bring in, selling the bread, to the everyday man. And, dealing with insurances, unfortunately, in this industry, it is what it is. But we have to keep showing up, fighting the good fight, to get things approved, to get things to go through, to get these, talking heads in Washington, D.C. to understand, because they don't understand. They're talking about 12,000 different things on any given day. How do you get a voice in there? And, to get anything to go through takes years upon years upon years upon years. However, if you get something that's good and cool, sometimes that's a direct sell to a few of the upper echelons, or to the military, or to industry, like we talk about with EXO and things like that, where you could pocket that into other places. Then it becomes good. It becomes fabulous. It becomes used. And maybe eventually, I could get a decent exoskeleton for my husband so he could keep repairing things around the house,
I feel like O&P change in O&P is sort of this war of attrition where you've got to fight the fight. You got to fight the good fight, but it's incremental. There may be some breakthroughs, but they're very hard to predict, hard to model. You may not know if you're looking at the next breakthrough or not. And, one of the this is a challenge, but it's also a good problem to have. I feel like O&P business owners are faced with all sorts of, potentially game-changing technologies every day. And the question of what if is, what about this? What about that? What about this other thing? Well, I can't try them all. At one point in you and I working together, we were doing some work around a particular technology that was acquired and, trying to be integrated into business operations. This was a really eye-opening experience for me because I sort of realized what happens when you take a gamble on a potential technology, sort of realize over time the disconnect between what might be possible and what's actually happening within the operations of the business. You and I never really got to fully flesh this out, but towards the end, I started to have this feeling of I can explain the technology till I'm hoarse, but really the proof is sort of in the doing. And I felt as an outsider limited to kind of implement because I wasn't the person making the bread, as you so nicely articulated before. So I'm curious if you can speak to, because you have a lot of experience consulting, this sort of dichotomy between trying to improve bread making by being a better bread maker versus telling bread makers how to do their job differently.
I'm going to try to answer that one, Josh. going too deep in my analogy land for me.
Well, okay, here, let me phrase it differently. I've had dark nights of the soul where I've wondered, maybe I just need to go become a CPO. I'm not going to seriously consider that at this point in
my you'd lose your mind.
Career. But
you'd lose your mind.
Probably. But I talk to a lot of young people who are kind of are wrestling with this. Do I go get a PhD? Do I get a CPO? Do I go work in some other industry because there aren't that many jobs in O&P? For someone who's passionate about this, I don't know, maybe the answer is you just have to go dive off the deep end. Neither you nor I really calculated our entree into this market.
Right. No, I think that you have to do what you love is the bottom line. And I talk to, a lot of young folks, in various walks of life and various careers. And if you go and chase a dollar, or you go and chase a pathway that you think, oh, it might be easier, more casual, whatever, but it's not what you love. If you're not at the end of the day, working for the right reasons and putting your head on the pillow and saying, yeah, that was a good day, I think you're going to cut your life short, or you're going to have a long life that's going to be pretty freaking miserable, right? So, and you see it. You see people drinking, using drugs, doing whatever kind of escapism they have to do, as opposed to saying, hey, I woke up today and, I said I never worked a day for the owners of Torre. Never a day. I worked for the people who worked for that company. I worked to bring in revenue, to keep them employed. I worked to give them the best quality work life possible, because people who show up at work, they deserve that. They deserve a good quality of work life. And unfortunately, that gets missed a lot for some other quests. But for anybody coming out, I mean, if you love education and you want to go and, you want to get a PhD, then do it. Then do it. And don't worry about anything else. Do it. It might be right. It might be wrong. You won't know. I mean, you just got to take chances, and you got to go out there and I think that sometimes if you got to be willing to look stupid, you got to be willing to fail. You got to be willing to, just say, okay, this got totally screwed up. This is not what I wanted. This is not what I meant to have happen. And then just regroup and move on again to the next thing. But yeah, I think that is part of the pursuit is, we have what is the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So pursue happiness, pursue joy, right?
I love that. I feel like the desire to not look stupid is one of the most dangerous things that's bred into us.
Absolutely.
I feel it every day. I mean, I feel it in the big picture, quote unquote, wanting to do something with your life. But then also in all the micro interactions that you have, the dozens of interactions that you have throughout the day. As an engineer, developing things that get used by humans for humans and hopefully bettering their quality of life, you really don't want it all to be for naught. So I guess I'm arguing against myself because I guess it's not the looking stupid that I get hung up on. It's the wanting to follow through, wanting to really deliver something valuable and not knowing how long that's going to take. So it gets me to kind of a closing point that I wanted to touch on, which is about the sustainability of the day-to-day. We've touched on this in a few different ways, but I want to get back to Jane Goodall because I love that reference, and we share this passion for thinking about the ecology of the world, reminding ourselves by immersing ourselves in nature. It's not all dollars and spreadsheets. But, our day-to-day it's all spreadsheets and Zoom meetings. And I'm curious if you have any perhaps closing words you could share about how you've kind of kept yourself connected. I think you touched on work-life balance. To me, I'm kind of forming this theory around work-life balance where it's not a scale. It's not where you have my work on one side and then sitting in the forest and smelling the air on the other side, and you need equal parts of each other to have balance. There's more like a balance is more like a fabric that you weave throughout your life and your career. I don't know. Have you kind of kept yourself grounded in the highly analytical field that you've operated in?
Well, very fascinating. I mean, whenever I was in college and I was I was hiking constantly. I did a field. My senior thesis was up on Prescow, in the dead of winter, and doing those kinds of things. And then when I thought the worst thing that anybody would do would be to work in an office all day. I thought that was just the worst, horrible thing. It's like being in a human terrarium, and where they just drop down a cracker now and then, and you do a task, and you get a cracker and you do a task, and how horrible could that be? And voila, there it was. But through my entire life, one thing I could say is I always kept in touch with nature, this incredible creation. And whether you're in a human terrarium or out in the woods, always have that life within the room with you. So my office at Delaware, I literally had a tree in my office. I had this huge Norfolk Island pine in my office. I always did anything I could. If you have a little plant, you always want to have I always had to have that. That was my heart. That was my grounding. And then whenever I could, to be out in it, that gave balance. And for me personally, I think that it's you've got to see the light. You've got to be out in it. You have to, artificial lights, all that kind of stuff. Never cut it, and it doesn't cut it. And they've proven that scientifically, it doesn't cut it. We are part of nature, and we need to be constantly being back and forth in it. And for our good mental health, and for everybody's good mental health, I think that it's great if you could take, staff and do outdoor. We had several prosthetic events, amputee events. I think, well, we had some that were indoor, but several of them were outdoors. And that was awesome. Just seeing people outside and playing outside and being in that kind of a world, you see a difference in human beings. It's essential to us. And then as companies, to have that kind of social awareness as well. That's another part of that, the different, pillars of a company. What am I giving back? What am I giving back to this world? Am I donating to, prosthetic parts to third world countries? Am I, recycling all this plastic, all this stuff? What kind of programs do I have in place? What am I doing to support people who are on staff who are going out and doing things for more social awareness? So I think that it's, like you said, you're weaving this incredible tapestry that's Josh Caputo's life. And the problem with it is you're weaving it, if you're seeing the underneath of it, right? So you're weaving it, you're seeing the underneath. If you look underneath of a tapestry, you can't always make out what it is. It's kind of rough. But when you look at it from above and you see the big picture coming out, it's a very beautiful thing. So I think that we always have to take time to kind of look at that tapestry from above instead of just, from below as we're sitting here, putting all the fibers together. Yeah.
I love this. We're rocking the analogies today.
That's right, man.
I feel like in the world of serious business, people, may tend to roll their eyes every time you bring up sustainability or recycling or nature or whatever. Like these are concepts that are removed from our day to day. Yeah, it is tragic because it's who we are. And, there's so many problems in life, in business, in healthcare that would be solved or addressed by paying more attention to the natural way of things. And there's more and more science coming out about this, but the old diet and exercise approach cures so many ailments, and yet we just become disconnected from it over time if we don't talk about it. So, that's why I want to talk about it. Thanks for indulging me. And yeah, I was just at a event at a hospital, sort of near the north side of Pittsburgh, and they are building a greenhouse where I don't know exactly what the plan is, but somehow that greenhouse is going to be woven into healthcare treatment for certain types of patients. The food is also, or the products of the greenhouse are going to be used in the kitchen to feed people.
Nice.
Just so cool. I was really inspired by that. And I think even if it might not be obvious how having the Norfolk Island pine in your office, has a good return on the business overall. You just got to do it because it feels good.
Yeah, I don't think all of our returns have a dollar sign in front of them, right?
Yeah.
But I can't tell you how many people would walk into my office agitated and that get calm. When you sit down and you have, just think about dead of winter taking a trip over to the Phipps Conservatory, which we are blessed to have in the city of Pittsburgh. I mean, that thing is renowned throughout the world. It is just incredible. And you go there in the dead of winter and you come out alive again. It's almost like you could get a feed going there. It's the oxygen, it's the green, it's all these things that scientifically proven over and over change our sense of well-being, change our mental states, help with mental illnesses, help with memory. I mean, all these wonderful inputs that it gives. And when you're thinking of, some of the patients that come to us from the prosthetic side, as well as the orthotic side, the things they've gone through. And, to incorporate any of that kind of in your offices, in your office space, and the places where you give care, if it could be more alive, you're going to get different outcomes. I totally believe that.
Love it. I remember meeting with you in your office, and it seemed like we would always spend the first 10 minutes talking about plants or some kind of animal, and just wondered why do we always wind up doing this? What's the point?
That's the real stuff, man.
Yeah, exactly. Eventually it dawned on me.
That's the good stuff. That's the fun stuff.
We're Humotech is planning its next move in terms of a new facility, and I'm going to take this advice to heart. We'll have trees growing inside.
Have some good skylights and set up to grow some green, some things in the, have a nice kitchen. It's not going to cost you much. Put a couple of racks up. You could grow some microgreens there. People go there, noshi, have some good stuff.
Amazing.
Go get some pea shoots.
Maybe you can consult with us on how to do this properly.
Hey, absolutely no charge. I will definitely show you the way.
All right. So finally, Joyce, just in closing, people who might be interested in working with you or speaking to you after this, after listening to this, how would they best reach you?
Well, you could email me. That's probably the best bet, or call or text. I'm pretty casual. Email is just my name, jperrone.jp@gmail.com. Or they could call if you want to put that in show notes. My cell number, I'm fine with that. If I don't like a person, I could block them,
That's my philosophy too. So you got to call me and send me an email if you want to get through.
That's usually the best.
Thanks, Joyce. Really appreciate you spending time with us. This has been fun.
And thank you, Josh. Just if I could just add one more thing, I don't know exactly who your audience is, but if I could encourage anybody to please be an advocate for this industry. Get up to Washington, D.C., get on, do Hill Days with the Amputee Coalition, with AOPA, go see your congressman, go see your senators, patients, anybody who's involved needs to really beat on doors to get things done. So advocacy is key. Just bringing it back around, for this industry in particular, to get changes made, we have got to really have a voice. They're the ones who decide if something's going to get paid or not for the average person who needs that day-to-day loaf of bread.
Thanks, Joyce, for the reminder. Do you participate in any particular national or state associations that folks should consider looking?
Not anymore. I don't personally anymore. but I always found AOPA to be amazing. It's a great organization. So is AAOP. They tend to lean more clinical, but as far as advocacy and business, and yeah, they have some amazing human beings at AOPA. Joe McTiernan, who's involved in reimbursement, he's just one of the best. And yeah, so it's an amazing group of people. I don't think they've ever let me down. You can't say that much about many organizations, right?
That's quite the endorsement. Look them up, and we'll chat, and we'll drop some suggestions into the show notes. All right, everyone. Thank you. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.
Bye.